Full moon, loads of aspects, loads of drama. In fact, you could argue that today is the most dramatic day of 2026. My name is Archie Dunlop. This is Talking Astrology with Archie, and it is Wednesday, July the 29th, 2026. In this video, I will be talking about the full moon, and it really is a very spectacular full moon, and I think there is actually quite a lot to talk about. And having talked about this full moon and considered its impact, I will go through the 12 signs, and as I go through the 12 signs, I will discuss how the full moon might impact these signs, and then at the end of the video I will do an I Ching reading. So let's start off with the overall astrological picture. So here is a chart for today, set for noon New York time on Wednesday, July the 29th. And we can certainly see the full moon. So the full moon, by definition, is when the sun is opposition the moon. And, the moon is in Aquarius, and it is opposition the sun in Leo. And so that aspect, which gives us a full moon, is really, the main event of the day. And, the thing about this full moon is that it kind of links with everything else. So, normally when I do these videos, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe, if appropriate. Normally when I do these videos, I sort of do a broad sort of astrological picture, and then I focus on one aspect. But I can't really do that because this full moon is so tied with everything else. So there's the moon at 7 degrees 13 New York time. So this full moon, if you're in New York, or if you're in the Eastern Standard Time, it takes place sort of late morning, sort of earlier if you're in California, this afternoon if you're in in Europe. So as far as if you're in Australia or New Zealand, just very quickly, let me just look at the chart for Australia and New Zealand. So at noon, we set the chart for noon in Sydney, Australia. The moon is at 0 degrees Aquarius. So in fact, if you are in Australia or New Zealand or East Asia, then this morning the moon is actually going to be in late Capricorn. So perhaps you might feel in Australasia that at first not a great deal is happening as the moon does move through late Capricorn, but then it does move into Aquarius, and as the rest of the day unfolds, you get that full moon forming. And before I go into the full moon in detail, I just also want to look at the heliocentric picture, as is my custom. So just quickly turning to the heliocentric view, we have the Earth opposition Jupiter, because we do have a Sun-Jupiter conjunction today geocentrically. So Sun-Jupiter conjunction is the same as an Earth-Jupiter opposition if we do take a heliocentric view, and it is all linked with Pluto because we just had a Jupiter-Pluto opposition heliocentrically, and the Earth is linked with that. So we do live in dramatic times, as this chart shows us. So anyway, let's look at this full moon and think about what it is about. So I'll actually just go straight to the full moon chart. So this is the moment of the full moon, and it is set for 10:35 a.m. Washington DC. And so, as I said, that means from a subjective perspective, it will be sort of later in the day, this afternoon if you're in Europe, maybe even early tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand. So this full moon, you've got the moon at 6 degrees 30 Aquarius, opposition 6 degrees 30, the sun at 6 degrees 30 Leo. So if we want to talk about a full moon in a broad sense, the full moon is that halfway point in a lunar cycle. When the moon moves from being waxing to waning. So from the full moon onwards, the moon in the sky is getting smaller. And it can be a moment of, realization when we see things for what they really are. Because the lunation cycle has developed. The beginning of a lunation cycle, we weren't quite sure what was going on, and it was sort of early days. We were still trying to develop an impression, but it really did start to develop, and now we see the full picture, and perhaps we start to understand the truth. Is it really possible to say what the truth actually is? Well, I think it is up to a point. Perhaps we'd been kidding ourselves and we ought to have been in denial. But, right now, with this full moon, the truth is very much available to us. Now, as far as the specifics of this full moon is concerned, we have got the moon in Aquarius opposition the sun in Leo. And you might say that, sun in Leo is very much, about the self. It's quite an ego-based sign, Leo. All things being equal, and the moon in Aquarius is perhaps asking us to be objective. It's not just enough to have a great enthusiasm. It's not enough to believe in ourselves. We've got to perhaps see things in a broader sense, and perhaps be a little more analytical. The moon is in an air sign. The sun is in a fire sign, and we've just had the North Node moving into Aquarius. So you could say North Node in Aquarius, the moon in Aquarius. This should be the direction of travel. We should be trying to perhaps get more into the Aquarius side of it, being more objective, being more detached. It's not all about us, but it could be. It might feel that way. Now, this full moon is exceptional because it is so powerfully aspected. So, for a start, it's conjunct Jupiter, or rather opposition Jupiter. The sun and Jupiter are only 4 arc minutes apart. And so you might say that if Jupiter is opposition the moon, you might say that is incredibly fortunate. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune. And so for many of us, it might indeed be a very fortunate full moon, where perhaps we become aware of our good fortune. We're aware of, all the things that could happen. Perhaps we had been in denial, that we just hadn't been, looking hard enough, and we'd just been looking the other way. But now we can see what is possible, and so there is certainly a positive side to that. But it is a full moon. By and large, full moons probably are less fortunate for new moons. I'm not saying this full moon needs to be unfortunate, but there's some danger of getting carried away. People getting carried away with their own enthusiasm. Sun conjunct Jupiter. Yeah, let's go for it. We can do it. Yeah. Over optimism, maybe. Insane over optimism. Sun conjunct Jupiter. And the moon in Aquarius is saying, well, hold on. It's not like that. It's not as simple as that. You've got to back off, maybe. So that is perhaps a danger with this full moon, that we just get carried away. And Jupiter is combust. It's it's making a cazimi conjunction to the Sun, and well, yeah, you've got this argument about cazimi conjunction. So in astrology, if a planet is combust, that means that it's 8 degrees from the Sun, and the Sun is seen as being quite a harmful energy. And this Sun could be seen as particularly harmful because it's in Leo. Ironic as that might sound, because Leo, Sun in its own sign, it's a really strong Sun, so it could burn everything it touches. But then when it's cazimi, within 17 arc minutes, something like that, depending on which source you use. I think William Lilly says 17 arc minutes. It's somehow Sun and Jupiter are on the same wavelength. We have a strong sense of, who we are, what we can do. We're very focused, Leo, a fixed sign. So yeah, that may be a way it works, but it just could be just too caught up in itself, and we believe we can do it. We really believe we can do it, and in the process, we could take something too far. But we do have to distinguish, perhaps, between ourselves. We are ordinary human beings on this planet. Most of us, we are free. But why are we free? Because we're not part of any political process. We're not a president. We're not a prime minister. We're not CEO of a big company. We're just ordinary people leading our lives. And from that perspective, it might well be that the Sun-Jupiter conjunction can be quite fortunate. But if you're a leader, you're a prime minister or a president or whatever, then you don't have much control. You are a tool of the cosmos. And so with this Sun-Jupiter conjunction, there's a lot of enthusiasm there, but it can be taken too far. And, if you look at the structure of this full moon, you've got Sun conjunct Jupiter, opposition Moon conjunct Pluto. So we talked about Jupiter-Pluto recently, and Jupiter-Pluto is about the desire to really go further, to really make the most of things, to take things to the next level, not to be satisfied with second best. And it can be quite extreme. And so the moon, the fact that the full moon is really linked up with Jupiter-Pluto, how far do we want to take things? And some of us, or maybe if you're dealing with countries, politicians, may want to take things to a crazy level. So I think that's why this full moon could be quite dangerous. Again, not necessarily for us as individuals, but maybe from a sort of in a sort of a geopolitical way. And it gets more intense from that, because at the time of this full moon, Venus is exactly square Mars. There is Mars at 21 degrees 27 Gemini. There is Venus at 21 degrees 34 Virgo. So you've got an exact Venus-Mars square, and the Sun-Jupiter conjunction is right on the Venus-Mars midpoint. So you could say then that the full moon is making a semi-square to Mars. So Mars is an aggravating factor. Mars is a planet of war, violence, assertion, aggression, and it's linked with the full moon. So some people might respond to this full moon by being aggressive. You got to see it through. Where do we stop? And because the full moon is linked up with Jupiter, so you've got a Mars semi-square Jupiter, which is another excessive aspect, wanting to take things too far, not necessarily knowing when to stop. As individuals, we have a lot of energy, and there's always a way to use that energy. But if you're a country, if you're the United States, or you're Trump, or you're Vladimir Putin or Zelensky, you have all this energy. Your country's got all this energy. It's got all these desires and frustrations. You could do something. You can lash out, and so it is, I believe, another dangerous aspect. And it doesn't know when to stop. And it's also linked up with Venus. So you've got Venus square Mars, and you have got the Sun on the midpoint. So the Sun making a semi-square to Mars, semi-square to Venus. And so I mean, there is another way of looking at it. So, Venus-Mars as a pair, is often connected with attraction, with relationships, with sexuality. Venus is a planet of, female sexuality, Mars a planet of male sexuality. And so you put the sun and the moon on the Venus-Mars midpoint. So you could say that, in a way, there is a certain sexuality to this full moon, and that this full moon is about how people relate, and passion and attraction. And when you're talking about Venus-Mars, it's not just about attraction, it can be about repulsion as well, because Venus and Mars are square each other. So those themes could be important just around us. Certain people, depending on what they're doing, what kind of relationships they're involved with, people they meet. Yeah, there is something certainly interesting from a relationship perspective with this full moon on the Venus-Mars midpoint. And you could say full moon on the Venus-Mars midpoint, you could then say, well, this is the implications of a relationship. This is how far a relationship goes. This is the consequence of two people being attracted to one another. This is this is where it leads, or it could be about a first attraction. So there is certainly a strong relationship side to the full moon. So if you're watching this video and you're interested in love and relationships and so on, then you might be interested in this. This is perhaps a positive. Maybe it could be argued that if you are trying to attract someone, maybe in a romantic sense, then this full moon can make the concept of attractiveness, stronger than usual. But you have to be a bit careful here, because Venus-Mars, it can be about repulsion as well as attraction. So, it can work two ways. But, let's be positive about it. I think that there is something definitely attractive about that Venus-Mars square, particularly when it's on the new moon. Though there's a contradiction there, because you could say the Venus-Mars square is about two people not getting on with each other. It can be about repulsion rather than attractiveness, but it is also a very dynamic aspect. And when you put the full moon on the Venus-Mars midpoint, it really does make itself felt. So the point I'm trying to make is that it is an incredibly dramatic full moon, and the fact that you've got Sun, Mars, Moon, Venus, Jupiter, just all coming together. It is really powerful, and we can look at the full moon just to demonstrate this. I just want to show you the eighth harmonic. So the thing about the eighth harmonic is a conjunction on the eighth harmonic means that two planets are going to be conjunct on the eighth harmonic if they are conjunct, if they're square, if they're opposition each other, if they're semi-square each other, or if they're sesquiquadrate each other. So when we set up the eighth harmonic of this chart, you will, I think, see what I mean. So there it is. So when we set up the eighth harmonic, we just see this sort of massive conjunction between Jupiter, Mars, Moon, Sun, Venus. And this is why I think that there's an argument for saying that this is the most dramatic day of the year. I think it is, at least astrologically. But also we know that when we do see a dramatic day, when it looks really amazing, sometimes you get these super days, like that day in early February when you had all the seven traditional, early February when you had that day in, I think it was in February 1962, when you had seven planets, all the seven traditional planets in Aquarius, that people got really excited about it. I think it might have inspired this whole obsession with the age of Aquarius in the 1960s. You had seven planets in February 1962. coming together. Yeah, there was a huge amount of excitement, but was it really such an exciting day? And perhaps if you look back to February 1962, in terms of the immediate events, it was perhaps a little bit of an anticlimax. So always be wary of this when people like me are just exaggerating and are just saying how incredible this is, a lot of hyperbole about it. But still, you cannot deny the fact that you've got these 5 planets all making hard aspects to each other, with really, really, a very close orb. And it's kind of linked up with Saturn as well. I mean, Saturn is not quite making the opposition to it, making a sort of a 16th harmonic conjunction to it, but still, these planets, a lot of these planets will be moving towards a 16th harmonic conjunction with Saturn and the nodes as well. So yeah, I do really think that it could be a very dramatic full moon. Now, I wanted to just look at the full moon from an astrocartography perspective. There are a couple of places which came to mind. So, and then I just wanted to look at some people and organizations that might be impacted by this full moon. So let's just go back to the regular chart. So from an astrocartography viewpoint, here is the astromap. I'm going to look at the astromap. Forgive me for being kind of Eurocentric, but I'm going to look at the astromap set for Europe. And so, here is the positions of the planets, at the time of the full moon. And so, what I'm really looking at is crossings. So, this line here is all the places where Uranus is on the opposite. Uranus is all the places where Uranus is on the descendant, and this place here, this line here, is all the places where Saturn is on the descendant. And so this line goes through the Russia-Estonian border. That's quite a tense part of the world, isn't it? And so there is a place in sort of northeast Estonia. I mean, there's Tallinn. It doesn't quite hit the capital of Estonia, where Saturn is on the IC, and Uranus is rising. But then we move down, and we move to really sort of northwest Turkey, European Turkey, and so if I were to choose any sort of set of capitals which might be impacted by this lunation, it might well be. We might be thinking about Bucharest, the capital of Romania. We might be talking about Istanbul. Istanbul. I know Istanbul is not the capital of Turkey; it's Ankara. But Istanbul, Bucharest, maybe Sofia. So Greece. Maybe parts of Greece. So Romania, perhaps Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey. I mean, Istanbul would be the place I would sort of look at most strongly. And so what you've got if you set the chart for Istanbul, you've got Mars on the descendant, and you have got Saturn on the IC. So let me just show you what I mean. So if I relocate the full moon to Istanbul, we have Mars pretty close to the descendant, and we have Saturn, pretty close to the IC. So there is a real Mars-Saturn feel to it. I don't know what could happen in Istanbul. Probably nothing will happen in Istanbul. But if I was, I don't know, mayor of Istanbul or whatever, I'd be looking out for, big sort of crowd events, things that have the potential to, be dangerous, and just something could go wrong. But as with these things, very often, it doesn't go wrong. But I'm just pointing it out that if I were to choose one part of the world which would be most affected by this full moon, I think I might go for Istanbul. I mean, there are other things to consider. We've got national charts and so on. I mean, somewhere relatively close to Istanbul is Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, where you've got Mars on the descendant, you've got Saturn on the IC, and you've got a similar situation with Bucharest. So that part of the world, maybe parts of Greece, so Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, northwestern Turkey, are places to consider. And then I just want to look at a few people and organizations who might be impacted by the full moon. India and Pakistan. So this is a chart for Pakistan. The chart for India is pretty similar because they got their independence roughly at the same time. And at the time of India and Pakistan's independence, Mercury was at 6 degrees Leo. So this full moon is conjunct true black moon Lilith in Pakistan. The new full moon is conjunct Pakistan's true black moon Lilith, and you've got India's chart. You see it's fairly similar. So India and Pakistan, they both have Mercury opposition true black moon Lilith, and that I know these are very different countries, but they have a very similar chart, and that may say something about their built-up hostility to one another. And Mercury opposition true black moon Lilith can be a war of words, words not necessarily being constructive. I mean, Mercury can also be about communications, technology systems, the internet, the media, the press. And so having this full moon on Mercury opposition true black moon Lilith, I think it might hit India and Pakistan, one or both. I mean, possibilities would be strong words by the leaders, maybe relating to each other. It could be about communication systems. It could be about the internet, telephones, the media, social media. So, those are two parts of the world we need to consider. I'm not saying it's going to be like, super dramatic or anything, because we're talking about Mercury, but just the flow of communication and what people say could matter, in these two countries. And, turning to the Middle East, here is the horoscope of Hamas. I mean, I don't know what time Hamas was formed. I believe Hamas was formed in December the 14th, 1987. And Hamas has its sun at around 21, 22 degrees Sagittarius. So that means that Mars is opposition Hamas's sun, and Jupiter is making a sesquiquadrate to Hamas's sun. In fact, the full moon is hitting Hamas's sun. So Hamas might be active, or there might be things pressurizing Hamas. Hamas might feel it has to do something. I don't know. I mean, I haven't really been following Gaza and Hamas that closely, but I think that might affect the organization, or perhaps internal organization, or the internal organization, or the leadership. And so Hamas was born on December the 14th, 1987. Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, was born on December the 13th. So both Mossad and Hamas have their suns in sort of late Sagittarius. Hamas 22 degrees Sagittarius, Mossad about 21 degrees Sagittarius. So Mossad has Mars on its sun, Mars opposition its sun, Jupiter and the full moon making semi-square sesquiquadrate. So both Hamas and Mossad may well be activated here. I mean, of course, if it's Mossad, we're supposed to not know what Mossad is doing. So who knows how that is going to manifest. Then turning to Australia. So in Australia, I believe was looking at the comments, and the government has done something with telephones. They've sort of forced people to download a load of information, and that's, or I don't know, how does it work? I mean, you tell me. I'm sorry, I should have been paying more attention. But download something which can allow you to be tracked with your telephone. I don't know. So that's been happening recently in Australia. But the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, he has his Mars at 6 degrees 42 Leo. So this complex, so this full moon is opposition his Mars. He's got Mars semi-square his Mars. His Mars is strongly activated. And so Mars in Leo, I don't have a time of birth for Anthony Albanese. We may be talking about someone, a proud man who believes he's in the right, and Mars is how he tries to assert himself. So this full moon really does hit him. It may encourage him to take things too far, to respond to some, a provocation, something annoying him. So Anthony Albanese might be impacted, and so might Australia, because he is Prime Minister of Australia. I know he's not the head of state, but the Prime Minister is very tied up with his country. And turning to Ukraine, there is the President of Ukraine. He has Vladimir Zelensky. He has his ascendant at 2147 Gemini, if he was born at 2 p.m. I think that's a time that is given for him. It may be wrong, but if his ascendant he's got Mars on his ascendant, and he's got this full moon hitting his Venus, and in fact hitting his Sun-Venus conjunction. So Mars on his ascendant, what's Zelensky up to next? I'm wary of predicting the fall of Zelensky, because he's just, I don't know, he just goes on and on, doesn't he? Logically, I know he's taken, logically he's he should have been replaced by now. I mean there are other people who have been perhaps scheming to take over, but I think he's gone to Washington, hasn't he, to go to Lindsey Graham's funeral. But that may say something about what he experiences while he's at Lindsey Graham's funeral. But he's got Mars on his ascendant, and the full moon hitting his Venus and his Sun, full moon on his Sun and the Venus. So that may be a reckoning for him, something going on, something irritating, something that he feels he has to do. He has to do something. Jupiter opposition his Sun, and Jupiter opposition his Sun-Venus conjunction. What's Zelensky going to do next? What's he going to do to really make sure that he keeps on being at the center of things? So that's perhaps something that we need to be aware of. And turning to France, Jordan Bardella, who is a leading light in the National Rally. He has his which is of course a sort of right-wing party in France. He has Mars on his descendant, and of course this Mars is on his descendant, so it's linked up with other planets. This full moon is semi-square sesquiquadrate his descendant, and Jupiter is hitting his descendant. So I think he probably has to be careful. We live in dangerous times. For example, in Britain, you had this right-wing politician, Anne Widdecombe, who was sort of murdered in her own home. I mean, even though she wasn't I don't think she was particularly active in politics. I mean, she was more of someone who was interviewed on TV. But she was 78 years old, and she was murdered in her own home. And so we live in tense times, and there may well be people who, I'm sure there are people in France who wish Jordan Bardella harm, and so it could be that now is a time where he has to step up his security, make sure that he's properly protected. There's always someone out there who may want to harm him. particularly with Mars on his descendant. But it could just be about rivalry. It could be rivalry, an argument and struggle in the political scene in France. It could be about him and what's going on internally within the National Rally. So yeah, he's someone who might well be impacted by this full moon. And finally, there is, of course, Donald Trump. Well, we can't avoid Donald Trump, can we? Donald Trump has just had, he's got the South Node on his ascendant. He's got Saturn semi-square his ascendant. And he's got Mars. Mars is on his moon. So he's got Mars in a really very sensitive part of his chart. Sun and the moon, and it's not just Mars, is it? He's got this full moon is semi-square sesquiquadrate his moon, so his moon really gets impacted. And being Donald Trump, I just feel he's going to respond. He does seem to pick up on this stuff so quite quickly, astrologically. So what is he going to do? He's going to do something. Well, I'm thinking particularly about Iran. What is he going to do? How is he going to feel it? It could make him do something that he later regrets, because this is quite an impulsive full moon. As individuals without any political power, we can deal with it. But if you're Donald Trump, you're a creature of the cosmos, and you get all this aspect hitting his full moon. Well, yeah, that is his question. What is he going to do? How is he going to respond? It's not easy. And I think he is frustrated at the moment because Saturn is semi-square. Sorry, did I say semi-square? Sorry, Saturn is sesquiquadrate his ascendant, South Node on his ascendant. There is a question about how he responds to it all. And of course, it might be what he says. He always says something. So kind of that's nothing new. He's always said something dramatic, newsworthy. But certainly this full moon does definitely hit Donald Trump. And I think we'd have to be kind of quite wary about what he does next. So if Trump's handlers need to make sure he doesn't do anything too impulsive, with particular reference to Iran. And that's it as far as my sort of specific coverage of the full moon and events and people. And now I want to turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, July the 29th, 2026. Aries. It's, in theory at least, a very busy day. There is a lot of action, and it's not just because we've got a full moon. We've got loads of aspects involving Mars, your ruler, and so it might be the case, Aries, but you don't quite know where to turn because there are so many different things to pay attention to, and it might be somewhat overwhelming. And you being an Aries, you're someone who is quite curious, in your own way, but you want to be, at the centre of things. But it can all be rather exhausting. So maybe you need to make some effort to get your priorities right. Now, I'm not going to tell you what your priorities should be, but perhaps you need to think about everything going on today, all the different impulses, and then, make some kind of that And I think that primarily, Aries, you should maintain your optimism. I mean, that I think, is important. At the moment, you are very aware of different possibilities, and you don't want to close down your options. So if you get involved in something you don't really want to do, then that it might be a shame. Likewise, if you can see the hurdles and the pitfalls, so if you see a course of action that you kind of feel you should go down, that path, but you can also see the problems. You're aware of how it might go wrong. Maybe there's no need to take the risk, and perhaps you should just focus on what you just feel good about. And one aspect we do have today is a conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter, in Leo, and that is really positive. And maybe that's all we need to say. Do something that you're good at, that you feel happy about, and just let everything else just look after itself. I mean, that would be nice, but it's going to be kind of difficult to entirely ignore everything else. I mean, after all, there is this full moon, and this full moon might be about how other people respond to you. We live in a social world, and so everything you do, Aries, may to an extent get a reaction. And you might think you're minding your own business, doing something fun, but you can't entirely forget about society at large, and perhaps your friends, associates. And does that mean that you should compromise? No, but then it might also be that you can consider the kind of messaging you give off, what you say about what you're doing. So perhaps you need to take into account, other people's sensitivities, because, it's not just that we've got this full moon. We have a square between Venus and Mars. It's just kind of amazing that we've got this square of Venus-Mars square at exactly the same time as the full moon. And, this Venus-Mars square is about other people. The full moon is about other people. And the Venus-Mars square might be more about people who you're quite close to. And with this Venus-Mars square, it just might be something you do, something you say, just perhaps goes down the wrong way. You might give rise to offense or confusion, or you just could say, the wrong thing at the wrong time. And it's possible that, certain people are perhaps going more slowly than you. They are maybe even more methodical than you. Just consider that possibility. You're looking for the broad stroke, and other people are looking for a greater sense of detail, and you just gloss over things. Let's move on, let's get on with it. But some people may just not really be quite in that frame of mind. They want things to be spelt out. And so, don't assume, Aries, that people naturally understand what you're talking about. Or if you give an instruction or you give an explanation, don't make assumptions. It might be, Aries, that things have to be spelt out. So just give people a bit of time. Give people a bit of time to understand, what's going on. And what you don't want to do is be too shocking. Make a sudden announcement. Do something without really explaining what you're doing, or your explanations might be very brief. And it's true that Aries as a sign can be quite impatient, and your impatience is at the moment quite close to the surface. So perhaps you need to just hold yourself back a little, and just give people, not just people, but the world at large, just time to respond. And in terms of your own actions, it's certainly true that you are enthusiastic. You just you have a pretty positive view that you can just make things happen, that things can be successful. But there are times when your enthusiasm could be taken too far. And if you act too quickly without thinking, well, that could cause a few problems. I mean, it could cause some mishaps. I mean, or worse. I mean, are you accident prone today? Perhaps. You might be more accident prone than usual. And if you are accident prone, well, why would that be? I think it just could be, Aries, because you are somewhat impatient, as I've just said. You want action, and if you don't get action, well, you might feel frustrated, but in a way, if you felt frustrated, that would suggest that you're imposing some kind of limitation upon yourself. So I mean, I don't think that I'd go so far as to say that you feel frustrated. You might just feel, well, you're just going to do it anyway, regardless. And it's true, I think, Aries, that you actually have quite a lot of energy at your disposal. I mean, it's good to have a lot of energy at your disposal, but there is a question of, what do you do with that energy? And if you have a lot of energy and you're not doing anything with it, well, that could be a problem, because the energy might sort of start moving in, perhaps undesirable ways, or ways that you're not fully conscious of. So that might be a good reason to just be constructive. If you're doing nothing, or you feel you should be doing something, or you're doing something that is dangerous just for the sake of it, or is risky, then that could be sort of asking for trouble. So it may be that another aspect of today is that you need to be occupied. You need to be occupied on something constructive that you enjoy, that is life affirming, and if you can do that, then so much the better. And going back to the full moon, or when we think about full moons, we often think about awareness, suddenly becoming aware of the situation, what things are really like. And it can be about being aware of how we are perceived, how you are perceived. And this full moon might give you insights into what some other people are really like, perhaps what your friends are like, what the group is like, and how they respond to you. And you might kind of see that there are some things that you do that are not necessarily seen favourably, but just because you get a negative reaction, or if you think there's a negative reaction, it doesn't mean you should stop what you're doing. It's just that I think that you just have a better understanding of the social world in which you're living, and how you express what you're doing. And it could well be that there are some things that need to be done in a way which is sort of more private, at least in the short term. You don't have to announce everything, and it may be the case that you need to just do things in your own way. That's not the same as being secretive. It's not like you don't want anyone to know. It's just maybe you just shouldn't make a special effort to attract attention, because you don't have to. There is a certain pride to today. Not just today. I mean, we've got a Sun-Jupiter conjunction in Leo, so perhaps at some level wanting attention. But honestly, Aries, you shouldn't want you shouldn't want attention just for the sake of it. You're fine. You don't have to make an effort to seek this attention. And the main thing is today that you are constructive. You're doing something you enjoy, and you don't do anything that is aggravating. And I think that you treat other people, at all levels, whether they're friends, whether they're very close to you, like partners and so forth, but you treat other people with a certain amount of respect. But it's not a time to compromise. You do need to do things that feel right, that you want to do. So overall, Aries, I think it's a powerful day with a lot of choices. Taurus, we have today a full moon, and this full moon is really, really quite dramatic, and I think that it affects all the 12 signs, but all the 12 signs in different ways. So if we think about this full moon, it is in Aquarius, and we've got the Sun in Leo, opposition Moon in Aquarius. So there are 3 points in Aquarius. You've got Pluto in Aquarius. You've just had the true North Node moving into Aquarius. And now you've got the moon moving into Aquarius. So that does mean, Taurus, that you should perhaps be thinking about, what is important to you and your ambitions. Yeah, your ambitions do matter. And they have mattered for a long time. I mean, they always matter to some extent, but with Pluto now in Aquarius, with the South Node in Aquarius, with the North Node in Aquarius, you should be thinking about your direction, where you would like to go, and certainly if you have a job, you have a career, you're looking for a job, or you just have ambitions in general, just think about how you are moving forward with them, and you can be dramatic and transformative. If things on the surface don't seem to be going your way, if there are sort of obstacles, that's not the end of the world. You need to move forward. You need to think about what changes are required for you to be free to do what you like. Well, not quite what you like, but in terms of following your ambition. And I think that with this full moon, you get an insight into what you want to do, where you are going, how you want to proceed, and perhaps you get an awareness of what might be holding you back. And we do have the moon in Aquarius opposition the sun in Leo. And sun in Leo, great place for the sun. Sun is conjunct Jupiter. So that is a powerful aspect. But there is a downside potentially to this Sun-Jupiter conjunction, especially because it's tied up with a full moon. It could be, Taurus, that you're thinking a little bit too much about the past, perhaps too much about what makes you feel secure, where your grounding is. It could be things about your family and things that you trust, and you value these things, which is good. I mean, you're a Taurus. Stability matters to you, but sometimes you can be overly concerned by stability, and it may be things like the past, the home, the family could at some level be holding you back, and you have to be maybe sort of more open-minded, be ready to take on the new. I mean, that might be just accepting the fact that society has changed. There are larger social changes. It might be about technology. I mean, moon in Aquarius and Pluto in the North Node. When you think about Aquarius, you often think about technology and how you bring in new technology. So if you've been resisting technology or resisting something new just because it feels a bit alien, feels a bit unsettling, then I think it's important that you do go for it. I mean, just because you accept technology or do something new doesn't mean you are abandoning the past. But I do think that perhaps you need to accept it. And if we want to get psychological with the full moon, and this might not apply to you, but the full moon is in it is across the sort of parental axis of your chart. So in jargon, if we take Taurus as the first house, then we can say that Aquarius represents the 10th house and Leo represents the 4th house. So in Western astrology, generally speaking, the 10th house represents the mother and the 4th house represents the father. So there may be something parental going on, and it doesn't matter if your parents have been gone for decades. They still have their influence. And, you might be thinking about, your mother, your father, what the influence of your parents was, and perhaps the difference between your parents. And, I'm not saying that, one parent is more important than the other, but, that difference does sort of mediate, the way forward. And with the moon in Aquarius, that might say something about the mother, particularly as you've got Pluto in the North Node now there, and the mother is the exemplar. I mean, don't forget that from a psychological perspective, the mother is generally speaking the person that introduces us to society. One thinks it's kind of the father, but that's not actually the case. I mean, the father doesn't have to be around. The father doesn't even have to be alive at the time that we're born. But the mother is more significant. And I think that there was a study. I think it was at the University of Chicago. Was it the University of Chicago? It was a study. I think it was in the 1950s, and they were trying to work out, why people voted in the way they did. And it was a really comprehensive study. It's a study, and they looked at all sorts of factors. And they found that in terms of how people vote, I mean, this is the 1950s. I think it was 1950s in America, and they were saying if there was any factor that had an influence on how people voted, it was how the mother voted, not the father, not anything else. It was the mother. No, it was a pretty weak influence, but that perhaps shows the power of the mother. And so maybe with this full moon, which is, it is a moon conjunct Pluto, opposition Sun conjunct Jupiter, there just may be something going on there. I mean, it's just something for you to think about, perhaps to think about your parents, even if they're not alive or one of them's not alive, just think about the dynamics between the two and, how they got on and indeed how they were different and how that difference might be impacting you as you sort of move forward. And at the same time as the full moon, there is a square between Venus and Mars. And it's exact. I mean, it's quite amazing, actually, how you've got this full moon and an exact full moon, exact Venus-Mars at the same time. I'm sure that's going to have an impact. But so, I've been kind of talking about Venus-Mars recently, and that could say something about how you get on with people, could say something about relationships. And with Venus square Mars, there may be a clash. It may occur to you that, you and someone else don't necessarily get on. Okay, it may be something short term, but I mean, I think it all links with a full moon as well. With the full moon, you might be aware that you and someone else don't get on. Someone who you may be working with, you may be in a relationship with them, but not necessarily. It could be someone or even a group of people who you have to interact with, and you just realize that there is some tension there. And it's not the end of the world. It's not like that you necessarily have to think about departures, breaking up or whatever. Just being aware of those incompatibilities and asking yourself, well, what are you going to do about it? And there are many areas in which could lead to a disagreement, but it's possible that money has something to do with it. So, when you start to move onto the subject of money, that could be the beginning of a rather difficult conversation. So if you want an easy life, maybe the area of money should be avoided. But perhaps an easy life isn't an option. Perhaps money is something that really needs to be, addressed head on. And in general, there is just a lot of energy flying around. I was telling out to Aries, I'm telling out to you. You have a lot of energy. Other people have a lot of energy. And I just think that, it's important that you deal with it in the right way. You have your own level of enthusiasm. And so, if you're enthusiastic about something, particularly if it relates to your work and your direction in life, then, I would just go with it. So, there is a lot going on. And it could have a big impact on you. But it is a full moon, and there's a lot to realize, and you may see the truth of the matter, and you may see what is holding you back, you may see what attitudes are holding you back, but at the same time you really can see the way forward. Gemini. The moon is moving through Aquarius, and you yourself have a broadly positive view of what's happening, and it is a very hectic day. I mean, it's a hectic day for everyone, but I would probably say, Gemini, that compared to a lot of other signs, it's perhaps going to be less hectic than you. You don't have to get tied up with this full moon, if you don't want to. And it may be that other people are perhaps losing a sense of perspective because there's so much going on, and that might actually give you a certain advantage, maybe an objectivity that just other people don't have. You're not directly connected. Things are just not quite so personal for you, and because of that, you do have a degree of freedom. I mean, still, there are things you want to do. There are things you want to get involved with. I mean, Mars is moving through your sign, and while moving through your sign, it's making a semi-square to the Sun, and it's making a square to Venus. So you're quite verbal. I mean, a lot of people are quite verbal today. You're certainly verbal, and yes, you might get yourself into trouble through what you say. I mean, Mars in Gemini, putting a lot of energy into words. Square Venus, Venus might represent issues relating to the home, to security, to some of the people close to you. And yeah, you could say the wrong thing, but that's just Gemini. But I think you have a certain control here. I don't think you have to upset things through what you say. I think that you can have a degree of discipline, and with the moon moving through Aquarius, conjunct Pluto, it's perhaps a time to be looking at things in a different way, to sort of moving beyond the trivial. And because this moon in Aquarius is opposition the Sun. Now with the Sun in Leo, you might like to get attention. You might like to show off your knowledge and your wit and point things out. If you know something, if something occurs to you, wordplay and so on. But I think you can move beyond that, and it's not about being clever. It's about moving beyond a particular situation and seeing the possibilities, and being able to be quite individual. That is the moon. That is the moon in Aquarius. But in terms of your individuality, just seeing the broader picture and having a degree of objectivity and detachment and sort of independence as well. Because if you are too focused on trying to impress people, by being clever, in a strange kind of way, you are undermining your own independence, because you are just focusing too much on other people, on how they're responding to you. And if you put the focus on getting appreciation, being somewhere where you get support and admiration, well, that's perhaps not especially healthy, is it? I mean, right now, because this full moon, it's in the same sign as the North Node. North Node in Aquarius, Moon in Aquarius, as well as Pluto in Aquarius. So, if you've got the choice between the high road and the low road, always choose the high road, the road that allows you to move beyond things, that isn't just working at ground level, isn't just caught up in minor facts which they might be interesting, but they're not especially relevant. And so that, I think, is the way forward. And don't make any one person too significant, because if you start to involve yourself with other people, you start to involve yourself with other people and their flaws, and how they've got things wrong, and how they're just distracted and deluded. And it's perhaps not a good idea today to be worrying too much about the social environment. And and if you get too close to any one person, I think things might go wrong. And at the very least, I think that your independence could be diminished. And so I think it's important to be an individual, and to just move beyond the trivial. And I mean, you don't want to be blinded by trivia. I saw that a long time ago. I remember I saw this card in a bookshop, and it was just all these things like news headlines and the media and all this information and so forth. But the message was blinded by trivia. I think I sent this card to someone. I don't know why I did it. I sent this card to someone, and it was just called Blinded by Trivia. I mean, I like the card, but I think actually I got quite a questioning response to this card. What message was I trying to give by sending someone a card with Blinded by Trivia on it? But you, Gemini, you don't want to be blinded by trivia. And this full moon could kind of open your eyes, and you start to see what is trivial, and you can start to move beyond it. Cancer. Being a Cancer, the moon is important to you, and today we have a full moon, and it's a full moon in Aquarius. And the sign Aquarius is sometimes a bit difficult for Cancerians to deal with. I mean, there is a way through, but it's just conceptually difficult. But that doesn't mean to say the sign Aquarius is a problem. I mean, one way of looking at the sign Aquarius is to say, well, Aquarius allows you to verbalize things. Verbalize not necessarily in a way of like talking about them to other people, perhaps just talking about them to yourself, putting words in your own head, being able to write things down, be able to describe things. And sometimes there can be just a lot of emotion flying around. Feelings can just develop out of nowhere, and the question is, what exactly do these feelings mean? And that can be a question, quite an important question, and it can be difficult for Cancerians to explain themselves, or even explain things to themselves. But I think it is starting to become clear. And so if you have been dealing with complicated feelings, not necessarily your complicated feelings, maybe other people's complicated feelings, it may just suddenly dawn on you what it's all about. If someone has been behaving in a strange way and it hasn't made a great deal of sense to you, it just suddenly might be absolutely obvious. And so that is a way in which the moon in Aquarius can work. Now, it being a full moon, it is often a time of awareness, seeing things for what they are really like, seeing the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter might show you that maybe things are just more complicated than usual. and you thought it was straightforward, I don't know, perhaps in terms of money, you thought it was simple, money in the bank, you've got this amount of money, you've got that amount of money, you've got these outgoings, and you add one number to the other, and you see whether you're in profit or whether you're in debt or whatever. That's simple, but it's actually more complicated than that. And it could well be that money is, influencing how people are behaving. Isn't it said that if you don't know why something is happening, if you don't know why someone is taking a course of action, or why a group of people are taking a course of action, a municipality, a government, if you don't know why they're doing it, then there's a good chance that the real reason is money. And so do think about that. And money can impact people's motivations in the strangest of ways. And it seems very base, but people have their own way of looking at things. And people are quite self-interested. And I think that if you open your eyes, and I'm sure your eyes are wide open, you can see other people's motivations. It's pretty clear, but you have to ask a few deep questions. It doesn't take many deep questions, and it does quickly become clear. And the path of complication may actually be the right path to take. We're always told that things are supposed to be simple. Is it Occam's razor? So if you have got a number of different solutions to a problem, or rather a number of explanations to a problem with Occam's razor, you should take the most straightforward explanation. But maybe in this case, that's not necessarily true. Maybe there is a complicated explanation that you don't really want to go down, you don't really want to think about, but maybe that is the answer. Maybe. I don't want to encourage you to sort of get involved in conspiracy theories. There's always a conspiracy explanation, and it seems more attractive. So, obviously don't go for conspiracy theories just for the sake of it, but things might be complicated, and you as a Cancerian, I think that you very much do understand that complication, and I think the full moon is going to help that. And this full moon, it is a very hectic full moon. It's linked with Jupiter because you've got a Sun Jupiter conjunction, and it's linked with Mars because Mars is making a semi-square to the Sun. So it is high energy. I think you have a lot of energy. And, the question is, what do you do with that energy? And I think that although I've talked about things perhaps being complex, in terms of what you yourself are actually doing, then maybe you should, try to be straightforward, and you don't necessarily have to draw attention to yourself. But, you don't have to hide, but, you just do things, in your own way, and you make decisions about how you are going to respond to whatever is going on today. And when we're talking about a full moon, remember that a full moon isn't just something that takes place on one day. Okay, the immediate impact of the full moon might take place on one day, but very often the full moon will linger until at least the new moon. Of course, we've got a new moon in Leo. Well, the next new moon I think is what is it? I think it's a total eclipse, isn't it? So we've got a total new moon eclipse coming up off the top of my head. I think it's on, is it on 12th of August? So, this full moon may say something about, the next couple of weeks, and the next couple of weeks may be a moment of realization, and a moment when you can sort of adjust yourself to a changing situation. But it's always about being aware, and as I said right at the beginning, it's about you being able to verbalize things which it didn't seem immediately obvious, but now now things are clarifying, and you can certainly start to explain things to yourself. Leo, full moon, and it's a full moon in your sign. And this full moon is really quite major. I like to look at full moons in a sort of a way that is realistic. People do over-dramatize full moons. I think astrologers tend to over-dramatize them in general. They look at any full moon and they say that, it's a massive change. Things are never going to quite be the same after this full moon or after this new moon, even if it's not an eclipse. So, whatever it is to get the views. But I do really think that this full moon is important. I mean, it's just got these incredibly tight aspects in it. I mean, it's a full moon which is exactly conjunct Jupiter or opposition Jupiter, because when you take a full moon, you describe it in terms of a moon sign rather than the sun sign. So the moon is in Aquarius, it's opposition the sun in Leo, so we call it an Aquarius full moon. But it affects you, and right now the sun is exactly conjunct Jupiter, and when you've got the sun exactly conjunct Jupiter, that can be really, really lucky. I mean, Jupiter is the great benefic, and it is conjunct the sun. The sun is your ruler. So it's possible, Leo, that actually things can really work for you. You can be lucky, and you can be aware of your luck. And it's not about, I don't think, about luck coming from nowhere, having a sudden windfall, winning a lottery, or finding a ton of cash on the street. It's not like that. And instead it's about just having the opportunity and being ready to take full advantage of it. And so that's certainly a way in which the Sun Jupiter can work. So you've got to believe in yourself, and this is a time when you can not just believe in yourself, but you can also get other people to believe in you. Now, one midpoint aspect that has been around for absolutely ages has been the Sun on the Venus-Mars midpoint. It's a direct. It's directly on the midpoint, so you can see that there is there's Mars, there's Venus, and the Sun is. Venus and Mars are 90 degrees apart. The Sun is 45 degrees from Mars. The Sun is 45 degrees from Venus. So now the Sun is actually exactly on the Venus-Mars midpoint, and so the power of this midpoint is really really quite intense. And Sun, Venus, Mars, Venus, Mars, you think about attraction, you think about charisma, being appealing, even sexual attraction. It is a powerful midpoint, and it does make you attractive, and perhaps that is part of your luck. That you can win people over. It's just something about you that may even be sort of irresistible. But just because it's irresistible, just because you might be irresistible doesn't necessarily mean things are 100% easy. I mean, the Sun is making a semi-square to Mars. It's also making a semi-square to Venus. So with those two aspects, it is possible to take things too far. It is possible that what seems to be a good position just becomes perhaps difficult because maybe you've taken something too far. So it could be a little bit of an edge to it. But very often attractiveness has an edge to it. If there wasn't an edge, then there wouldn't be an attraction. So overall, I think that certainly makes you prominent, and it's not a day when you need be ignored. And so if you want attention, then I think you can get this attention, and in many cases, this attention can be favourable. Now, Sun on the Venus-Mars midpoint certainly has connotations about relationships, and of course we've got a full moon as well. So this full moon is across the main horizontal of your chart. It's across the relationship axis of your chart. And so with a full moon, I mean, if we break this down, you can say, well, the sun really strong in Leo, particularly as it's conjunct Jupiter. And then the moon is opposition the sun. Now, it's possible, Leo, that you could be overwhelming. Moon in Aquarius, opposition sun, opposition Jupiter. So do think about the other person, perhaps, how you occur to the other person. What is another person thinking? So you don't just see things in your own terms. Think about that other person. Think about how they might be seeing you, and how they are responding to you, and particularly if you're aware that there is a power discrepancy, particularly if you have the power, you might be too much to handle. I mean, that's certainly a way in which this full moon could work. Additionally, we've just had the North Node moving into Aquarius, and we know now you've got the Sun and Pluto in Aquarius. That means that it is a time lasting between now and I think the end of March 2028 when you perhaps need to give other people just a little more consideration, and don't feel that it's all about you, and just give everyone a bit of space. And the North Node in Aquarius is reminding you, that it is, again, as I just mentioned, not just about you, but a little bit of detachment, a little bit of objectivity, not feeling that it is about you getting the attention. Yeah, you can get a lot of attention, but you've also got to pay attention to what other people are doing. And it might be, for example, today you should make a special effort to take an interest in other people, even if you don't actually feel interested. Just go through the motions of asking people questions and interacting with what they're saying. Not just like saying, "How are you? I'm fine," and leaving it at that. Just to try to find out what people are doing, what people are interested in, demonstrating that it is not all about you. And of course, as we've got a full moon, full moons are about awareness, and this full moon can be about an awareness of what relationships are like, what is going on. Whether a relationship is worth pursuing. It might be a new relationship, might be an old relationship, but I think you can see the dynamics of various relationships, in a new way. And whatever you discover, whatever you realize, don't over dramatize. It is possible, with that Sun semi-square Mars, that you do exaggerate. In fact, the Sun conjunct Jupiter as well, there is a tendency to take things too far and to overreact, but I think that is a tendency that you should resist. But you should also accept that at the moment you do have a lot of power, and you do want things to happen, and you'd need to find a way of using that power, finding a way of focusing that energy in a constructive way, constructive for you and also constructive for everyone else that you share this planet with. Virgo, it is a really hectic day. I mean, it might well be the case, looking at the whole of 2026. But today is the most active day of the year. I mean, it's possible. You could argue that. But, the question is, how much does it impact you? Well, I think I would say that you perhaps are not necessarily in the center of things. A lot of the action might be taking place in terms of, other people, what other people are experiencing. It might be, what you are noticing, and you see action, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be involved with it all. And that might mean that there is a certain amount of detachment, but I don't want to exaggerate that. I mean, it's useful to have detachment, to be able to sort of step back and sort of analyze what's going on, and I think that is something you can do. And right now, Virgo, it is important to keep your cool. And I'm sort of reminded of one of the I Ching hexagrams, which is hexagram number 51. So hexagram 51 is one way of looking at it. It's like the thunder. It's thunder over thunder, and it seems to be very dramatic, and it's almost sort of catastrophically dramatic. But the I Ching tells us with this hexagram 51 that we don't have to overreact. We can continue with what we're doing. We can continue with the routines and the rituals of the past. So we don't want to be hyperbolic about it. Things can be okay, and we don't have to make dramatic changes. And that might be how it feels to you, Virgo. Yeah, it might all be dramatic, but it might to a great extent be other people's dramas, and you yourself can continue with your routines, continue with your plans. Again, not hugely significant plans, but you just do what you were going to do anyway, and you don't get sidetracked, and you stick with it, and keeping your cool. That's definitely the way to handle today, and not to be dragged off course by what other people are doing, what other people are saying. Maybe maybe it's a situation where some people are trying to get you to panic, trying to get you to take something super seriously. But you can probably, I won't say ignore, but you just have to realize that some people are exaggerating. And as far as you're concerned, you see the way forward. I think that you're relatively positive about the way things are going, in yourself. I mean, you might be inclined to see, danger around every corner if you listen too hard to other people. But I just think, Virgo, that you fundamentally, you know what's going on. Even though it is a very sort of dramatic full moon, and you have your own ideas about what you want to do. And if there is an aspect that has an impact on you, I would have said it's a square between Venus and Mars. So Venus is in Virgo, it's in your sign, it's square Mars, and Mars is in Gemini, so it's a mutable square. And Venus in Virgo, says something about you, how you are presenting yourself. I think you present yourself very well. I think you can present yourself actually as a safe pair of hands. You know what you're doing. And it's square Mars. Now, that square Mars might sound like a difficult aspect, but it's a dynamic aspect, and it's an aspect that, in a way, makes you possibly, rather ambitious. There are things you want to do. Mars is still in Gemini. Gemini, for you is a very goal-orientated sign, and so you may feel that there's just some things you just want to do. You just have to do it, and it's not necessarily easy, but if you feel it's got to be done, then I think you can do it, quite effectively. And you don't have to always assume a conflict. If you do apparently run into some resistance, I think you're going to be able to explain yourself, very well. And at the same time, you don't have to be part of things, not entirely. And by just having a little bit of detachment, and not not feel that that you have to be actually in the center, and indeed you might at some level kind of value your own privacies, but at the same time you're doing stuff that is important. And I am thinking that this full moon and everything else is not necessarily going to directly impact you, and I think that does give you freedom to make your own choices, make your own decisions, and to pursue your own goals. Libra. Venus is square Mars. Venus is exactly square Mars. We have seen this aspect building up over the last week or so, but now it is exact, and Venus is exactly square Mars at the same time as a full moon. And so with Venus square Mars, there could be a clash, or you might be aware of a clash, and it might be a clash that has been building up for some time. You maybe see how you and maybe others are getting on with one another, and you perhaps see that things aren't great, or that you're perhaps being pushed in a direction but you don't necessarily want to go. And so with other people, whoever those other people might be, just be wary, and don't necessarily do things in company or do things in a partnership with another person. It might seem to be the right idea, but I think in a way you're going to be best off if you are doing things on your own, in your own way. And there are certainly social opportunities, and this is kind of hinted at by the full moon. You look at you and society and your role in society and how people see you in society, and if you have friends, how you relate to them, and if you're working, colleagues at work, you can see all of that, but you can also see that it's rather too much to deal with, and it might actually be getting in the way. It might be getting in the way of your own freedom of expression. The moon is in Aquarius, and with the moon in Aquarius, that doesn't just say something about your freedom, how you're expressing yourself, but it also might say something about your ambitions and how you define your ambitions. And ambitions, sure, you've got to accept what is socially acceptable to some extent, but you've also got to think about what is your unique talent set. And especially now that the North Node has moved back into Aquarius, and you've got Pluto in Aquarius, Moon in Aquarius. So the Moon is in a way picking up on these sort of outer planet energies. Okay, I know the North Node isn't really a planet; it's a point, but you are picking up on these energies, and you're thinking about, or you should be thinking about, what your unique contribution is. Yet, with this full moon, there is pressure to conform, and I think that Libra, you're very aware now of this pressure to conform. And being a Libra, very often you feel it's the right thing to do. I mean, that's what many Librans do. But it doesn't have to work like that. Just because you're aware of this pressure doesn't mean you have to give in to it. And maybe at some stage you can turn things round, rather than you conforming to others. Maybe in the end, other people can conform to you. And this full moon very much sort of highlights, where you are in terms of your friends and wider society, and you perhaps have, a good idea, of how you are responding. And I just think it's very important to put your own individuality first, especially as we've got with Venus square Mars as well, and Venus square Mars could be about someone getting in your way, someone telling you what to do, someone having ideas that you don't necessarily agree with, but you've somehow got to go through the motions of agreeing with them. And so I think Libra, the broad message of what's going on is that you need to put yourself and your own ideas and your own creativity first. And if your creativity is being watered down by social interaction and by having to conform, I think that this full moon will make it clear. And you might be of a view that it's just impossible, that you have to conform, that you have to do what you're told, but you have to ask yourself, what is the right way forward? And now that the North Node is in Aquarius, the right way forward is to be yourself. And the line of least resistance, maybe the South Node in Leo, is to seek attention, seek approval. But I don't think that's what you need do. And so it's important that you don't underestimate yourself. And don't forget, Venus very soon is going to be moving into Libra at the beginning of next month. When Venus moves into Libra, it will start to make a sextile to Jupiter, and that's going to really help you. That's going to give you a strong sense of what is possible, and I think it will also give a boost to your overall level of luck. Scorpio. Mars is your ruler, and Mars gets a lot of aspects today. It is Venus is square Mars, Sun is semi-square Mars, and Jupiter is semi-square Mars. In fact, Mars is very connected with the full moon, because this is a Mars full moon, you could argue. Because Mars makes a semi-square and a sesquiquadrate to it, and so that does put the focus on you, and you may feel that there is very much something that you have to do. You don't just want to sort of sit and watch. That's not how you see things at all, and you want to be involved. But just because you want to be involved doesn't necessarily mean that you should be involved. I mean, you're aware of your power and your influence, but it is possible that you take things too far, and part of you really wants to look after yourself and look after your own interests. And this full moon kind of brings it all home. And this full moon in Aquarius is potentially about the sort of the home work balance. Because if you've been watching my videos recently, you'll know that I've put huge store in the fact that Jupiter has been moving through Leo, and I've regarded Jupiter moving through Leo as a real positive for you, in terms of your ambitions. And now we've got today, a Sun conjunct Jupiter. I think that today, I think you are incredibly ambitious. I hope you're incredibly ambitious. That would be fine. And there are things that you want to do, you want to get on with, and all of that is good. But Mars is making a semi-square to the Sun and Jupiter, and the Moon is making an opposition to the Sun. That's a definition of a full moon, and the Moon in Aquarius kind of represents something else. It's all very well having big ambitions, but if in the process of chasing your ambitions you trip yourself up, well, that's no good. And perhaps you need to think about, what makes you feel secure, what makes you feel comfortable. And, that's the Moon in Aquarius. And you have to respect the past. You have to respect, all of the various components of your security system. I don't mean the security system really in terms of some electronic device and cameras and so forth. I'm thinking more about your home, your family, the people you care about, the people you go back to, whoever they might be. And you can't tear things up. You can't tear up the past. You might want to. I mean, Scorpio as a sign is quite transformative. Every now and then Scorpios like to create a massive change. And you might be thinking about massive change at the moment, but if that massive change means involving just tearing up the things that are really the bedrock of your life, well, I don't think that's such a good idea. On the other hand, you cannot ignore your own ambitions. With Jupiter moving through Leo until July of next year, it's important that you are successful and you give it your best. And with this full moon, if we see it at its most positive, you kind of get a vision of how things really could be. It's about you achieving your full potential, and at the same time keeping your security complex, your security apparatus, your sort of emotional security apparatus, all in order. And it might be that your success is rooted in the past. It's rooted in everything that you've been brought up to believe, your experiences in the past, how it has been developing, how it works as a story. And I know people go on too much about storytelling. Everything's got to be a story, but there is a story here. And so when you contemplate the future, imagine it's all part of a book, your memoir, and how does the past inform the future, and how does the past create the future? And so that's perhaps something you should work on. Now, if you were to kind of ignore the past, have a year zero on your past, well, it might be difficult to think about the future because the future would have no grounding. So these are the kind of things that you should be thinking about. And, we do have a square between Venus and Mars. And so, Venus-Mars square, it's a heavy aspect. And it's an aspect that is often connected with relationships. And Venus square Mars might well be about some kind of disagreement, or you just being aware that you and someone else have a difference. Surprise, that's not really a surprise, is it? Everyone is different. No one is the same as each other. So perhaps that's something you're aware of, but maybe you'll see that someone close to you, maybe they're complaining about something, or they're just bothered about the wrong detail, and what they regard as being important you regard as being trivial, and vice versa. And how do you deal with that square? Well, you could just stay out of other people's way, or you could just be constructive and listen, and not feel that you have to just always assert your opinion. You always have to comment. You can just perhaps just let people be. And if you see that someone is different from you, and they're expressing views that you don't necessarily feel sympathetic towards, that doesn't necessarily mean you should argue. And so don't have an argument unless there is a good reason to have an argument, or even just don't be contrary just for the sake of it. And perhaps even don't take things necessarily too seriously. So someone says something that you regard as being really outrageous, you don't have to respond immediately. Let things settle. So overall, Scorpio, it is a powerful day, and I think that it does require on your part a certain amount of maturity, and you're being told things, you can see things, you can see how the future might be developing, and it's not just about today. We've got a new moon in a couple of weeks' time, and so between now and a new moon, as the moon is waning, as you start to incorporate the lessons of a full moon, I think that you can get just a better understanding of what's going on, and how you want to define your future, and how you want to relate this to your past and to your family and your home and things like that. Sagittarius, a lot of activity. Yeah, there really is. I mean, it is an incredibly busy day, Sagittarius, and for many of us, it just might seem to be really, quite overwhelming. Because there are just so many aspects, and of course, the centerpiece of what's going on, is the full moon. And this full moon is perhaps getting you to think about what you believe in, what is important to you, what you've decided is even worth fighting for. There might be sort of a moral dimension to it. We talked about this in the comments. The concept of Sagittarius and morality, and I'm not a Sagittarius. I don't have anything in my chart in Sagittarius, but I know that some Sagittarians have been commenting on what I've been saying, and my view or my suggestion that Sagittarius is quite a moral sign. Even if sometimes Sagittarian seems to behave in a way that seems to be immoral. But, even immorality has its own morality from a Sagittarian perspective. And so, with this full moon, there could be some challenges to what you believe in, to what you think is right. You may think you've got all the answers, and you may think you've got some broad concept that allows you to navigate through life without having to ask any further questions. But there just may be just a few things coming to light, which maybe you're seeing for the first time, and they perhaps act as a contradiction. And with this full moon, you've got Sun in Leo, opposition the Moon in Aquarius. So Sun in Leo, it's a fire sign. It's about it's about your element, being fiery, reaching sort of instant conclusions, maybe instant moral and philosophical conclusions. But then you've got the Moon in Aquarius. Moon in Aquarius, in an air sign, and Moon in Aquarius is just perhaps a bit more considered, a bit more logical, thinking about things. And I know that sometimes too much thinking can just bring everything to a halt. But when you look at something in isolation, you see, we ask yourself, what does it fit in? And sometimes one has to adjust what one believes in to take into account the real world. It's very easy to just have a philosophy, have a view of the world, and it's just going to impact us, all the time. But it could just become wishful thinking, or it just could become just dogmatic and unreasonable, and that's not what you want to be. So do consider the facts as they develop, and aside from a full moon, the Sun is conjunct Jupiter today. I mean, in fact, the Sun is Cazimi conjunct Jupiter. So Jupiter is combust because it's within 8 degrees of the Sun. But the Cazimi conjunction is when it's really close, within 17 arc minutes. And so you could say that the Cazimi conjunction does strengthen Jupiter, does strengthen you. I think that's probably the case to an extent. I mean, I think that you are strong. You are very confident. I mean, you can be confident, and you can be confident in your beliefs, and you can be confident in yourself, and it might feel that there are certain things that you really can achieve in that sort of fiery kind of way. If you know you're going to be able to do it, maybe you can do it. It's when when you don't have any doubts that you can pull off something quite exceptional. But having the Sun conjunct Jupiter, there might be something just in your way. Perhaps you're sort of blinded to some aspects of reality. So if you go too far, in one direction, if you believe in yourself too much, maybe that's not such a good thing. but I mean, it depends. You certainly don't want to be. You don't want to be dogmatic, but maybe sometimes it's necessary to be dogmatic, to really believe that something is going to happen. And so, it is up to you to work it out. But I'm just indicating that, you could potentially take things too far, and, you have to consider other people as well. Mars is making a semi-square to Jupiter, and sorry, yeah, is that right? Yeah, Mars is making a semi-square to Jupiter, and Venus is making a semi-square to Jupiter as well. In fact, Jupiter is, on the Venus-Mars midpoint. I mean, that certainly makes you special. It makes you stand out. You're someone who can get, a huge amount of admiration if you want, and you can come over as someone who is attractive, someone who's really generating a lot of powerful energy, and so that certainly does put you in a good position. And so if there is something you really need to achieve today, I think there's a very good chance that you can, but just have some awareness of the impact you're having on others, because in some respects, you could be quite over the top, and it's important you don't get too caught up in yourself, and do pay some attention to what is happening around you, and if an event happens or if a fact emerges which doesn't quite fit in with your beliefs or your plans, don't just feel that it can be discounted or you can just jump to conclusions. If possible, see everything on its own merits as being independent, and just because you believe something just doesn't mean to say that it is necessarily true in all situations. But I don't want to take away from today. I think that today really is, in many respects, quite exceptional. Capricorn, there is a huge amount going on today, and I think it might well be the busiest day of the year astrologically. But that is a theoretical view. Is that going to work in practice? Well, I mean, it's nice from an astrological point of view if you can see it all working out, but of course theory and practice can sometimes be different, and the question is, what does it mean for Capricorn? Now, Capricorn, I think this extreme energy around us doesn't necessarily impact you as much as it impacts other people, and that might be a good thing. So you don't have to be absolutely at the center of things. You don't have to be involved. You don't have to be sort of caught up with all the chaos. So that should be regarded as being good news. You can sort of do things to an extent at your own pace, and I think compared with the other 12 signs, you probably have more free will than most. So perhaps it's just a question of you deciding what it is that you want to do. And I think that your overall approach is quite positive. You're not going to restrict yourself. If you see an opportunity, you're ready to take that opportunity, and you can judge things on their own merits, and you're not going to exaggerate. A lot of people are exaggerating today, but I mean, I don't think you have to. And you can be surprisingly sanguine. You can be positive. You can be optimistic. I mean, I know that Capricorn has a reputation for being a bit sort of melancholic in its view, but I think you can be fairly sanguine about what's going on and what's happening, and about the various possibilities. So that maybe gives you an advantage. Now, we do have a full moon, which can't be entirely avoided, and this full moon is in Aquarius. And this Aquarius full moon, I think, is kind of asking you to, bring things, down to earth, to really try to make things as, straightforward as possible. A lot of people are maybe trying to make things complicated, make things, multi-dimensional, and, you can't just understand it just by looking at it. You've got to ask deep questions, and, if you're not prepared to ask those questions, well, how are you ever going to understand it? But Capricorn, you're an earth sign. You can, by definition, be down to earth, and you can just see what something is like, and you can look at things in a fairly sort of detached way. And so you take something that everyone else is afraid of, everyone else thinks it's complicated, perhaps it's of a financial nature, but you can just see it for what it is. And I think that you do have the capacity for independent thought, which not everyone has. And part of the reason I think you can be quite independent-minded is because you're just not caught up in everything, in the same way that other people are. You can hold firm to just what you believe in, and not just what you believe in, but your surroundings. It's all there. You don't have to move anywhere. You don't have to experiment. You've got it all sorted out. And because you've got it all sorted out, I think that that means that it can be a relatively straightforward day. And at times you might feel that you're a bit of a spectator, watching everything else and just not being involved. And I think that you have a degree of you do have a degree of objectivity, and even if something seems difficult, I think Capricorn, right now you do have this capacity to really bring it down to earth. And when you're presented with something, particularly if it has a sort of a financial side to it, you can sort of strip it of all the emotion and all the intensity, and you can just see it for what it is, and you can rationalize it and maybe discuss it as well. Things other people don't understand, you can talk about. You can talk about it. You can explain, and I think that your explanations are going to really make a lot of sense. And really, Capricorn, it can be as simple as that. But just make sure that you have the space to do things your own way. I mean, you might find that some people have rather elaborate ways of wanting to do things. Particularly if you're working, if you have a job, you have to kind of do what other people say. They may not just be overcomplicating, but just having all sorts of ideas, and you look at these ideas, and it doesn't mean much to you. You can just bring it all down to earth, but it's certainly not worth an argument. And in many cases, Capricorn today maybe all about humouring people. You just nod and you say, yeah, that's fine, and you give the impression of listening, but in the end you do what is necessary. And that, I was fidgeting. So that's it. So it it can be for you, Capricorn, a pretty straightforward day. Relatively speaking, that is. Aquarius. Moon is in Aquarius. In fact, Aquarius, there is a full moon in Aquarius. And this full moon does of course impact you, because this full moon is across the main axis of your chart. And so with this full moon, you could say that some things are becoming clear. Some things are becoming really really obvious. Now, you might not want them to be obvious, but I think that they are becoming so. And you being an Aquarius, you're often capable of a certain amount of objectivity, real objectivity, and objectivity regarding sort of yourself and what's going on around you, but also other people, and perhaps sort of relationships as well, because this full moon, we've got the moon in Aquarius, opposition the sun in Leo, and so the sun in Leo conjunct Jupiter. That could be about someone who is quite full of themselves. Could be someone very close to you who's quite full of themselves, and there might just be a lot of pride flying around. So what do you do with proud people who think they're wonderful? And there's you, perhaps moon in Aquarius. That's about you, and you're a hard person to impress right now. And you're not going to be blinded by other people's displays, but that doesn't mean to say that you should just create a scene or just be dismissive. Perhaps you have to accept that other people's egos to some extent need to be massaged, particularly if these are people that that are important to you, but you don't want to upset them, and you kind of just you have to listen, and you have to just accept that they perhaps need more attention than usual. I mean, that is certainly a way of looking at this full moon. And this full moon, well, we could see it in a different way, and we could see this full moon as just being an extension of you. When you've got Sun conjunct Jupiter in Leo, that may be something about you're not owning. You not owning, your desire to be appreciated. It could even be that you're not owning your own luck. You're not owning your own good fortune. Perhaps, there is good fortune waiting for you. Perhaps there's something really important is unfolding, which you can take advantage of, but you don't want to be involved. You're just looking at it in a dismissive way, and that would be a shame. So there is a possibility of a missed opportunity because you're just being too objective for your own good. Perhaps you're overthinking the situation. And indeed, with the Sun Jupiter conjunction, it might well be the case that you can benefit from another person. By knowing the right person, they can help you achieve something, or they can give you advice, or they can just give you something. So you might be potentially, Aquarius, at the receiving end of another person's generosity. And so do think about how that could all occur, how you're capable of being positive, enthusiastic, seeing things in the absolute best possible light. Now, that's not something you normally associate with Aquarius. Aquarius perhaps does have a reputation for being detached and realistic. I mean, after all, Aquarius is a Saturn-ruled sign, but you can see things in a new way, in a different way, and realize that this is a time when there are many possibilities, and that might well be how this full moon is working. Perhaps this full moon is it's making you aware of your own luck, of what actually you can do if you're given a chance, and also what other people can do for you if you give them the chance. And in general, this full moon could very well be about relationships. It could be about a turning point in a relationship. And when we're talking about turning points, that doesn't mean we're talking about a negative turning point, a relationship coming to an end. It could just be a change of phase if you're already in a relationship. If you're not in a relationship, then, and you're looking to be in a relationship, then you might certainly see this as something quite positive, someone new appearing on the horizon. It may be represented by Sun conjunct Jupiter. So I think that it does look like being quite a fortunate day, but you've got to own that good fortune. What you don't want to do is, be an observer, be a complete observer. Sure, you can be an observer up to a point. Aquarius has a reputation for being quite detached, but you don't want to be too detached, because I think that if you are too detached, you could well miss an opportunity. Pisces. The main thing today, of course, is a full moon. And, there is this question, how are you going to be impacted, by this full moon? Well, this full moon is hitting Jupiter. I mean, we've got full moon in Aquarius, and we've got the moon making an opposition to Jupiter, and also the sun making a conjunction to Jupiter. And I think this does require a bit of care, I think, because it could be argued that that Jupiter is entirely combust. I mean, you've got this idea: is Jupiter in a Cazimi conjunction, or is it combust? And well, it is combust, but there is a view that Jupiter is extra fortunate now because it is so close to the sun. And it might be that there's just a moment today, Pisces, where you just get it. You absolutely understand things. It's all clear. And, because it's all clear, you can, take the necessary steps. And if you just keep your focus, and you're working on something, and you're able to get it absolutely right, if you can maintain your focus, if you're not distracted, if you don't you might get distracted at the last moment, but you've got to maintain that focus. But there is a full moon, and so the moon opposition Jupiter, and so if you have an idea about how the way things should work, whether it's in terms of how you're organizing yourself, how you're organizing your life, your health, your diet, or whatever, the full moon might indicate that there's perhaps something you've missed. And perhaps you need to just look at it again. And when you're doing something, day in, day out, you can get quite proud about it. You can feel, this is the right thing to do. You can feel quite virtuous, and because you're feeling virtuous, it seems to be, whatever, a virtuous circle. You feel good about it. You keep on doing it, and you've got it sorted out. And the full moon is kind of telling you that maybe not. Maybe it's not entirely sorted out. Maybe there's just something else that you need to consider, and that's something to be aware of. So don't think you've got it entirely sorted out. I mean, you've got perhaps most of it sorted out, but you might just be perhaps blinded by the regularity of your own daily routines, and they might blind you to something else. But full moon is just it is forcing you to perhaps see things in a new way, and to see that you haven't got all the answers, that there is some fine-tuning required, and it's nothing to be concerned about. And you also have to accept that some things are maybe just a little more complicated than you'd realize, and you've also got to be aware of your own psychology. You can try to fit yourself into a straitjacket of routine, but you can't do that entirely. There's still something that wants to get out, and so maybe you need to just look after yourself and realize you are a Pisces. Pisces is a mutable sign. Give yourself a little bit more variety, and don't tie yourself to something just because you want to just create stability and you think that's the way to do it. I think the full moon is asking you to just be more reasonable, and perhaps it's actually saying you've got to be perhaps less tough on yourself, and give yourself a little more room for maneuver. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now it is time to look at things from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I ask the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 16, which is enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is a hexagram which sounds good. It's good to be enthusiastic. It's good to be positive, to think that everything's going to work out. But, we can take things too far. I mean, we look at the structure of this hexagram. We have got, the top trigram, the top three lines represent thunder, and the bottom three lines represent the receptive, and perhaps the lower part of the hexagram, perhaps that's saying something about the nature of enthusiasm, being too receptive, just getting caught up in something without really thinking about it. There is this thunderous energy, and we just say, "Oh, let's go with it. It seems fun. It seems exciting. Where exactly is it taking us, or do we care? Let's just get on with it." And looks like a good hexagram, but there can be a problem, because if you're enthusiastic for the sake of it with no grounding, then it's going to get nowhere. It could go worse than nowhere. We could get ourselves into a situation which is quite unfortunate, because we just have been so enthusiastic we hadn't seen the downside. We'd only seen the upside. And maybe if you look at the astrology of today, we've got a conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter, really strong Sun, Jupiter in Leo. It's exciting, it's dynamic, it's fiery, but the Sun and Jupiter just is perhaps too much. We can just get carried away. Jupiter is combust. Okay, it's a Cazimi conjunction, very close to the Sun, and so the Sun can damage what it touches. It can even damage Jupiter. And so, Jupiter is that enthusiasm, but it's an enthusiasm that is perhaps misplaced. Now, we have one line moving, and it is the second line. And this second line is actually quite fortunate. It is talking about awareness, and we are aware. We are not going to get carried away. Other people might be enthusiastic. Other people might not be thinking about the downside. They might just want to just rush in. But we are not going to be overwhelmed. Absolutely not. We're going to maintain our reason. And there might be something, for example, that other people are very excited about. They want to get involved in. They want to just jump in head first. But no, that's not us. we know how things could go wrong. And so we're prepared to hold back. And furthermore, if there are any dangers out there, I think we know about them. It's aware to us, may not be aware to other people, but we can see it. And so that does kind of help us. And when and I don't think we're going to do anything stupid. So I think that our general stance as far as what is going on today is realistic, and we're able to look after ourselves and perhaps look after other people, and because we can perhaps give some sort of timely warnings. And we're not going to get caught up in it all. Now we have a moving line, and that means we move to a second hexagram, and the hexagram we move to, perhaps unsurprisingly, is hexagram number 40, which is deliverance. So deliverance is talking about, something bad could be happening, could be about to happen, but deliverance. We get plucked from disaster. We can save ourselves. So the overall situation might indeed be quite dangerous, something quite uncontrollable, that we could easily get caught out by it. But first of all, we understand the problem. We're not getting caught up in the general positivity, and we know we have to safeguard ourselves. And then we take that action, deliverance, and we are able to do something which saves us from disaster. And maybe it's just about running. We know how to escape. We see the escape and we go for it. So I know it's all a bit dramatic, and it's just a reading for the day, but just think about what you are doing, and it just may be one activity that you or perhaps other people are involved with that is not working. It could move from bad to worse, and if you deliver yourself now, if you escape from it now, you might get your chance. I think you will get your chance. I mean, that's what it's saying. So if you're trying to get rid of something, if you're trying to untangle yourself from something, then I think today, you can do it. And that's it. That's all I've got to say in this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.